Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Season 2, Humanitarian Horizons, Christina DiArcangelo Unveiled. And with me today, I have a very wonderful guest who's not only a colleague, that's how we originally met, and then we became friends. You may have remembered her from Season 1, Dolores Wolfe. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks, Christina, for having me. This is a very important issue, and I'm honored to be part of it too.
Well, I am so glad that you agreed to join me and to talk about this very important issue,
Absolutely.
because not a lot of people want to talk about this. And so, guys and ladies,
Yes.
we are talking today about the prison system and how recently some of you may have noticed that there have been escapes that have been occurring in multiple states throughout the United States, wherein people have escaped from prison and have been on the run. Recently, we had a massive escape happen in August. At the end of August, his name was Danelo Cavalcante. And ironically, Cavalcante was back in the court system today because they have filed multiple charges back against him because of his escape. He was out for 14 days running around in Chester County, Pennsylvania, which is a very affluent area of Pennsylvania, full of farmland, so it's easy to hide. And why we're talking about this topic is that there are a lot of things behind this topic that's very important that we think we should address. And granted, we can't hit everything today, so we'll have a follow-up discussion.
Yes.
But one of the most important things that I think we should talk about is, how is this actually happening, that these people are getting out of prison so easily? And the Cavalcante case, and this is all over the media, what's happened, they knew the prison, the new acting warden, had received an email from a CO, a correctional officer, advising that there was a potential threat of Cavalcante escaping. Also, Cavalcante escaped the same way another prisoner had escaped in May.
Right.
The
And
Superman
they didn't
or the
fix him
Spider-Man.
running up outside and
Yes.
yeah.
And that guy, ironically, they caught very quickly, right?
Yeah.
It was like a couple hours. Cavalcante was out for 14 straight days. He stole a dairy van. He got a shotgun. He was 4 miles away when he was captured from my personal home, which was very upsetting because I have a small child. And now we're on, lockdown because we are afraid that this person who has a shotgun, who already murdered twice, one time in Brazil, came in illegally, and then murdered again.
Yep. Well, the story was, the interesting part, they broadcast the story and but then there's no follow-up. There's no follow-up on how he got out, why it was so easy for him to scurry up there, after someone else had already done it. Why wasn't the problem resolved? Why didn't they fix the escape hatch?
Yeah. Why didn't the Chester County Commissioners and the Chester County Prison Board not handle it then? Because it was a problem. And then it happened again. And prior to it happening, they knew that there was an issue because they were warned that there was going to be an issue. Then later on, after all this happens with Cavalcante, then a correctional officer was bringing in drugs illegally. He lived in Philadelphia. He was bringing in drugs to Chester County Prison, and he was selling them to the inmates, and the families of the inmates were cash apping this person.
Yep.
What is going on? And then after all this happened, I reached out, me personally, I reached out to Chester County commissioners, our governmental officials, the head of the DOC multiple times, because we have a solution with spectral analytics, precision telemonitoring. Our telemonitoring system geofences, and it also tracks so that way we know where people are. We built it initially for patients. These people are also patients. And then we have the biometrics ability so that we can track their biometrics, which is very important when you have inmates, I shouldn't call them inmates, incarcerated individuals who are in prison who have health issues. And you have 1 or 2 doctors, a couple of nurses that have to tend to these people. And then we're seeing in the news that people are dying in their cells and they don't know what happened to them.
Well, and I just sent you that article on the woman who now the nurse and the medical assistant from the prison are on trial for murder because they accused her of faking her the epileptic attacks and her reaction to what they had given her. And she died right there in front of her in her cell. I mean, and that now you have two medical assistants who aren't in prison. They aren't prisoners and whatever. They were freed before, but now they came negligently, watched her die, and they're on trial now for murder. Okay, so they're going to be in prison as prisoners, not as medical assistants. But they accused her at twice. And then when someone wanted to help, another prisoner who knew how to help or wanted to assist, they said they absolutely would not let them and said, no, she's faking her symptoms because they said she wanted to be taken to a hospital. And that wasn't it at all.
No.
And
if in fact she would have been hooked up to SAPTM,
right,
we would have known, they would have known, meaning the prison staff would have known what was going on with the patients based on, because they're patients at the end of the day, based on the biometric feedback that they're receiving. So this helps them tremendously, especially some of the patients or the incarcerated individuals that come in as a patient who have terminal illnesses like cancer or HIV, or what about the patients or I'm sorry, I keep referring, but they are patients.
They are patients.
The people who come in that are hooked on opiates and are going through withdrawal and they're not helping them go through withdrawal and they're dying in prison.
Right. Right.
Imagine how the families feel of these poor people.
I was just getting ready to say that the families have to live with the heartbreak and anguish and the trauma of knowing the surroundings that their family member died from because of negligence, because they wouldn't help. They wouldn't help. It's like watching doctors stand around and look at someone who needs medical attention, not doing anything. And, but the families have to live with that forever. And that's not fair to them. That's not fair to the families at all.
No.
And I know it's a, it's kind of equivalent to the social media influencers and child bullying, and that was just in Congress yesterday.
Yes,
if
Facebook,
you can take desire, that's who's going to pass the bill to determine that these things have to be in place. The monitors, and the testing, and so that the information and data is given to the people, because I want to say patients too, the prison guards and the prison personnel, they're not equipped for that.
They're not medical doctors.
No. And so they can't, they need the training, they need the access to the information. If those two women had access to it, they'd know she wasn't faking.
Exactly.
Now they're up for murder.
And then
the woman's family.
Look what happened in Alabama, that article I shared with you where the guy died in the cell. He was almost ready to get out and he was killed. There was a disturbance. He was killed in a cell. Now, again, if they would have been monitoring them with the wearables, they would have known there were however many people in this person's cell. They shouldn't have been there, right? Number one. Forget about the cameras. Nobody's watching the cameras. The prison system wants to add more cameras. Nobody's watching the cameras. They can't hire enough COs because they pay them $25 an hour.
Exactly.
Yes, you can drive a bus in the state of Pennsylvania for $25 an hour. What do you think people would rather do? Drive a bus for $25 an hour or do this for $25 an hour? And you're making them do things, to your point earlier about the medical aspect. They're not trained professionals. They're not physicians. They're not physician's assistants. They don't know what they're doing. They're not hired to do that. That's not their fault. But that guy who died in Alabama, when the family got the body so that they could do a proper burial, he was missing his heart. How did that happen?
God.
And there's been more than one case of people who've been in prison in Alabama who are missing their hearts. What are they doing in the prison system with the people's hearts? What are they doing with them? Are they doing research on them? Because you and I, we work in the research sector as well, and you can't do that without consent.
True. it's a travesty, and it's a preventable travesty. We were just talking about that. I mean, this is a preventable, this is preventable catastrophic events with these tragic results, and they can be prevented before they even happen.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not something that you, like I said, you could guard against because it was happening naturally, like a hurricane or a tornado,
Right.
tsunami or something. But this is an attack on innocent victims,
Mhm.
and they are innocent in that sector of their lives. They're
Mhm.
innocent victims. They need medical attention. They need help. I mean, even when we are together in a group somewhere and something happens, and you don't know what's wrong with the person, a friend or something, their
Mhm.
eyes roll back or whatever, or in a football game. I have many athletes in my network, and, they get hit and then they don't, like the gentleman from the Buffalo Bills, and his heart, he stopped. He actually died on the field. They didn't know what to do, Now, if they had, so it's the same type of thing. You've got these prison personnel who, first of all, they have to be, I mean, they don't spend money on training them in their own job descriptions to the extent that they could handle all of this. So putting a person in prison and then forgetting about them and letting them just let things happen to them and let the people deal with it inside there. I mean, they haven't updated the architectural infrastructure. They haven't given them, I don't know, prisons. Somebody should take the congressman on tours of the prisons, because they're not, the personnel's, doesn't receive funding for training, proper training, that kind of training, with that kind of information. And these are people who are caretakers. They're caretakers, I mean, they
Mhm.
need to take
Not,
care.
not to mention the proper training, okay? They need that,
Training.
right?
Yeah.
But they also need the training from working, like not the training, the therapy to
Yes.
help them, because
Yes.
they see very bad things, okay?
Right.
People killing people in prison. I mean, how many times do we read about this in the news about people dying? I know firsthand from my brother being in prison,
Yeah.
some of the stories that he told me, and he was in state prison. And it wasn't like he was in a county prison. He was in state prison. So it was really hard, and they move him around and you have to figure out where he is. And that you don't know, by the way, when they move him, because they
Right.
don't want you to try and get him out illegally, whatever. And then all of a sudden they're in the hole again when they move to a new prison,
Right.
because who knows what they took from the other prison with them that they're not supposed to, contraband, they're not supposed to. But
Exactly.
my brother told me a lot of horrific things that he saw, murders he saw in prison. It was horrible. And so the workers, that are there working, they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to help these people the best they can for what they've been trained with.
Right.
They go home at night or in the morning, whatever their shift is, and imagine what they are going through from a PTS standpoint, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it's pretty extreme.
Yeah, PTSD. And I was saying this before too, the behavioral monitoring is an asset. It's a preventable asset to provide to the personnel, the in prison personnel, and the prisons themselves, they have that as a highlight, an asset, to have that data, to have that tool, to have the behavioral monitoring information, so that even the guards aren't timid about doing what they think they should do, because they don't know if it's right or wrong. This gives them guidance. It gives them, like you said, training. It gives them the expertise to handle, and the reputation of the prison goes up from 1 star or no stars to 10 stars. I mean, yeah. So
And the lawsuits that
the lawsuits,
arise,
exactly,
the
and
negligence, to your point,
publicity. Yeah,
right? To the two
those two
ladies,
women. Yeah,
right? The families just, the family should sue,
right.
all the things that have happened to these poor people who die in their cells, or they've been murdered or whatever, that sue.
And they get millions.
They sue.
They settle out of court for millions.
This can alleviate
Plus
all
the
of that,
taxpayers.
right?
Yeah,
Because
plus the taxpayers.
if we're monitoring them biometrically wise, so
Right.
we know if there's heart rate issues, oxygen level issues, things of that nature, ECG, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
If we're doing that, and then we turn on the MBOT, the emotional bot, so now we're helping their mental health,
Right.
right? so they have a buddy that they can
And
talk
that's
to.
protective. That's protective of the prison guards and the COs and
Exactly.
the people who will work there, and then they will get more qualified people to want to
That
work
would
in
want to be
that kind of
there.
environment. Yeah. So I mean, all the pluses and no minuses makes it kind of a no-brainer. And it's definitely a public issue right now. It's got to be, this is the year to actually bring it to the table and get it done and make it a highlighted national possibility for prisons to be able to provide this. There are so many other key people who are coming in and starting up their own home care and hospice care and things where care for seniors, and a lot of people can't afford it, but they are seniors, so some are very expensive. Some people have to go away on a trip or something, business, and they can't leave people even, so when people are in prison, they have no rights to
None.
call somebody or pay for somebody to come in and care for them. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
correct. That
So
is
when you take their
absolutely
rights
right.
away, then they can't care for themselves, then you have to be equipped to care for them. I mean, that's kind of
That's an excellent point. And I also, because we're getting near end of our time,
I know.
the last switch, I've been doing this all day here, I'm going
I
over.
could too.
Uh,
I,
but it brings up a good point, and that is the call to action to our politicians who are running for
100
office
million%. Yeah.
or are already in office and their term's not up yet. They
Yeah.
need to do something about this.
Yes.
I know for a fact in the state of Pennsylvania, I've contacted a lot of our politicians about this specific topic because of the fact that it impacted me so personally and all the people in Chester County, which is where I grew up.
Yeah.
That we need them to action this. We need their support so that it's not a choice that the Department of
Right.
Corrections,
Right.
because they don't want to spend the money on this. There is no choice. It
That's
has
true.
to be remedied. These are human beings. These are not aliens. They're not animals. These are human beings.
Yeah, absolutely, 100 million%. And like you said, I mean, it should be part of the architectural process. It should be a part of the building process, the renovation process. Equipment is sold to them, and this is something that needs to be a requirement, to be in place to open a prison. You know what I'm saying? Just
Yeah.
like other shelters and things that are required by law to have certain things for protection, security, sanitation, things like that. And and it protects the personnel as well. So, you can't throw someone in the hospital and then not give them a nurse's call button.
That's right.
No, I mean,
it's lunacy.
it is.
Well, thank you so much, Dolores, for coming on today.
Thanks.
No problem. And we will definitely be talking about this more and more as we embark in this journey of trying to create awareness surrounding this very, very, very important topic.
It is.
Because we need to talk about it. And for the longest time, I couldn't talk about a lot of things because my brother was still alive and I didn't want to embarrass him.
Right.
And now that he's passed away and my mom has passed away, and my father has already passed away. So I can start talking about these things to try and help people and come from a place of head and heart. It's not about us making money at SAPTM. We're not shooting this podcast because we want to make millions and millions.
Right.
That is not why we're doing this. It doesn't cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to subscribe to our telemonitoring anyway.
No. You're saving lives. You're saving lives.
We are
all
saving
lives,
lives.
not just, all lives.
Everybody, people
and
working there, everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you're just, you're not just talking, you're acting, you're putting your life energy into it. And that's what's going to make the difference. It's got to, it's the difference. So
I agree with you.
Please, me, I'm ready and available anytime, 24/7. Tap into my resources and tap into my brain, even if I don't remember to tell you, you just spark it.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Dolores, for being on today.
Well, thanks for having me,
My It was my absolute pleasure. And thank you to all of our listeners and viewers for joining us and listening to these very important topics that we're bringing up on our new series of Humanitarian Horizons. See you later for now.